Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Oley Valley School District Board of Directors committee meeting for March 9, 2020. Roll call, please.
Pollock.
Here.
Heckman.
Here.
Pfeiffer.
Yes.
Backen.
Yes.
Jackson.
Here.
Keller.
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Perry.
Here.
Zachin.
Here.
Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to announce at this time, do we have no plans for an executive session? However, should the need arise, we'll take advantage of it at that time. School program, Dr. Shank.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. Tonight, we are very pleased to have with us the middle school again. On their Avidum program that they have implemented and the great work that our students are doing. So I will turn it over to Dr. Rohr and Ms. Ushner and the wonderful students they have brought forward this evening.
Good evening. I'm real happy tonight, obviously, when you have students involved and they're taking leadership of what they're doing and how we're putting the program out to the school at wide. It's just great to see them here and to see their enthusiasm and see what they put together for a night. Because to tell you the truth, I'm going to speak very shortly, but they've got a presentation for you and they put a lot of effort to it. And I'm excited to see how you feel at the end of it. A couple things about Avidum. You're going to hear a thing about it. It means I got your back. We started in Lancaster County School several years ago. And we started it 2 years ago in the middle school, the first year of COVID, before COVID hit. Tried to get everything going, then COVID hit. And then last year we had it. So we started it slowly. We're implementing things about the process and what the program is about. And shortly you'll hear a little bit more about it. But basically it's a program that tries to address concerns where students may be depressed. There may be suicidal ideations. There may be issues with bullying. What it really does is try to promote to the students at large that everybody should be there and everybody should have each other's back. And I'm excited about this year, the first normal year. For the most part, we've had a normal year of kids back since day one. And we were able to start some programs with it. And again, what these students put together and the art that they put to make this program work has been nothing short of outstanding. The thing about Avidum, and the reason I started, there's concerns each year, and we hear it about bullying. We hear concerns about harassment. We hear concerns about students that are depressed. And I really wanted to see what we can put in place to address those needs. It's not easy. Everybody has a different definition of what bullying or harassment or what's okay to say to somebody. Everybody has their own opinions about different things and aspects. But what it comes down to is trying to see how can we treat each other well, treat others as you'd like to be treated. It's the golden rule to many, but it's a simplistic way of putting that's what all we're asking is everybody to treat each other as you would like to be treated. And again, as I stated, it's not easy to address these topics oftentimes. And when I spoke to students, I have a student advisory that I meet with, and some of the students are on that advisory here tonight as well. And when I ask them, or I ask other students in the building, one of the most difficult things when it comes to addressing bullying oftentimes, or you hear concerns about harassment or students that are depressed, is they don't feel comfortable saying something. It's nothing short of, well, this student has been again and again, these students are doing this, this, and this. It's hard to address if it's not reported. So we started to stand up, and when we had our class meetings, I started to challenge the students to say, look, if we got to decide what we want our school to be. And one of the proudest things I've seen lately is more students are stepping forward and we are addressing issues. And that is the first step. I'm fine with the incident that we have students and numbers of instances of different things that occur. Not that it's a good thing, but I have students now that are starting more and more to say, hey, this is happening. Can you help address this? That is an important, huge first step in addressing issues when it comes to whether it's harassment, bullying, depression, because kids care about each other and they want to see something done with that. So before I turn it over to the students, I have one last thing. Because of that, the biggest concern, like I had from many students, is they felt they were tattling. They felt that some students felt if I said something, well, to make the situation worse. So I'm proud. One of the things we've drafted this year was and we're starting, and again, in conjunction with this program, is what we're calling a mentorship program draft. And the idea of it is pretty simple. We're looking at having high school students come down, Our middle school students will go down to the elementary. But where we have these instances, we want students with guidance involved, and that's it, to give them an opportunity to address certain issues and concerns that they may have with other students and see if they can work them out so they don't have that, because it is a big concern when they come to me, well, you're in trouble, you tattle. The angle here is to try to get students to try to work their problems out. And if that doesn't work, then see what we can do. Obviously, we'll coordinate that with parents and these instances that occur. But I think it's important to mention this because this is all part and parcel of what we're doing and what this program is about. Finding out the root causes of how we can support students, get their input, challenge them to have a standard in the building, but also to have each other's back. It's that simple. And I think it's a great opportunity. And what we'll do with these students that come down from the high school, hopefully they'll support, work, talk through, and see if we can get some of these challenges with students when they have issues or they're saying things or whatever it may be to get them to turn the corner and move forward. We'll see. Can't guarantee anything, but I'm excited about the enthusiasm that we have and the direction we're headed. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Usner. She's one of our art teachers at the middle school, and I will let her begin the presentation.
Still working on getting it to show up for you. So I'm going to improvise. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the whole club itself. It is a very large club. This is a smaller kind of a branch of the club. This is the Avidum Art Club. So at the middle school, we have 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders involved. Our 6th and 7th grade are kind of our marketing. They do a lot of the activities within the school. They created handprints as part of a back to school program where kids went in and wrote some things on each of the handprints, some of their positive qualities, which we have hanging in the lobby of our school. So that's one of the things we've done as a group. I did have a video that I would show you, but I can show you at the end if we can get it working. And it kind of gives an idea of the actual art part of Avidum and how we've created kind of our own club as an offshoot of the Avidum Club here at our school. I just want to give you an idea of some of the students who have devoted a lot of time for me in creating some of the murals, one of which you can see behind you that we brought with us. We wanted you to see how large some of the murals are that we are creating, and this is one of the final pieces. We still have a few more to go. The Avidum Art Club meets several times during the week. We meet during our RISE periods, we meet during our club periods, and we meet during links. We also meet after school on a Monday. So we have lots of time to work together as a group with ideas and actually creating our murals. The Avidum clubs that I have, the members that I have with me tonight, if you would stand when I call your name, and they will be presenting to you in a little bit. We have Alita Bogdanova. We have Nisa Geist, Emma Liskey, Corinne Reinstein, Mazzy Shell, Carly Sinchik, Cheyenne Walsh, and Isabel Sanchez. Okay, and I will be showing you in a little bit. I can show you some in-progress work. Again, we have about 6 murals that we're working on. Maybe I can show you some in progress, maybe not. Okay, so one of the things that we have talked about with Avidum is building a healthy school environment for all students. For the characteristics of healthy schools, which we have found research-based from Avidum, are the 4 qualities are accepting and welcoming all, appreciating and valuing others and their opinions, acknowledging and recognizing all students, and also caring and helping all students. So tonight, all of my helpers are going to explain to you how we exemplify those characteristics at the middle school through our Avidum Art Club. The first characteristic is accept, and we are going to have a representative for accept. Come on up. So we have Mazzy Shell and Carly Sinchik. They'd like to talk to you about acceptance.
Turn it on.
No matter your race, religion, or sexuality, everybody has the right to be accepted. Our club strives to encourage others at Oley Valley to accept each other and love each other for who they are, no matter who they love or their race. Nobody at our school should feel discouraged or forgotten. No one should feel sad or disheartened for being themselves. Students at our school have a difficult time accepting others, and that's what we plan to change.
Good job, girl. And we have the next quality is appreciate. We have Alita talk to you about appreciation.
Here in Avidum, we appreciate everybody who has supported our cause. We appreciate the school board for lending us the money to buy the supplies we need. We appreciate the staff who have helped us with dealing with the wooden boards. We appreciate our principals for approving our ideas. And last but certainly not least, we appreciate our art teacher, Mrs. Usner, for bringing our group together and being the best teacher we could ever ask for. We also appreciate each other for being able to be there for us. And we've grown very much to accept and appreciate who like one another are.
Okay. And acknowledge is our next quality. Emma Liskey will talk to you about acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement means that we see the work, effort, growth, and the future we are making for the Oley Valley School District. We started the club in 7th grade, a group of kids that didn't really know each other, didn't have much classes together. But now we are a group of friends that have one thing in common. We're all trying to make our school a better place, a better environment for learning. Every one of us has put in so much work and effort in these boards, whether it was drawing them, figuring out the designs, making the quotes, painting, which actually brings me to my next point, quotes. When we were trying to think of what quotes to put on the board, which is very hard, just to pick a couple, we all thought of one, Mrs. Negrini's famous quote, "Be someone else's great day," which is the one we brought with us today. In class, before we leave every day, she always tells us, "Be someone else's great day." We thought that was such a powerful message to send to everybody, that you may not be feeling amazing, but someone else could be feeling worse. So just be someone else's great day. The boards will go outside of all of the bathrooms throughout the school. Later down the road, we hope to put and make more boards so they can go all around the school. We hope that the quotes we put on these boards will help and influence the future generations of Oley Valley Middle School students. And our last one is care. We have Nisa Geist.
In Avidum, one of our main goals is to care for each other students, our faculty, and most importantly, our school. During our time in this club, we have bonded as a family. We go out of our way to make sure everyone in the club and the other students in our school feel comfortable, safe, and happy. For example, we care about our school. We have put time and energy into making these murals to make our school a more welcoming and beautiful environment.
Okay, are you ready?
Avidum, we've got your back.
A special thanks. We would like to thank a special thank you to the Oley Valley Education Foundation for funding the Avidum Art Grant. All of the students in Oley Valley Middle School have benefited from the grant. Funds from this grant have been used to purchase the Procreate app for all of the iPads for every student in the middle school, Logitech digital crayons, which we are using within our regular curriculum as well as in our Avidum Club, and also drawing and painting materials, which are being used to create the large murals being produced by the Avidum Club. Anytime you're available and want to come see our murals, by the end of the year, we should have them all hanging outside of each of our restroom areas. And again, we have 6 of them coming. I want to thank everybody for tonight for having us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions? My understanding is it did project out on the on the thing. It's just not showing here. So good thing. So you guys did awesome. You're able to adapt. These are awesome kids. Can we have it one more time? Because these are the reason we're here, right there. So anyway, great job, Pam. Thank you. Awesome job. Any questions other than that?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
They work really hard on the videos and the PowerPoints. They didn't work when we set it up and dry run. I don't know if it's the ghost of the valley or it did work. We did test it. So I will get that out to the board members so that you can see that, the video and the PowerPoints, and you'll have that students did a fantastic job, and I also want to thank Mrs. Sussman for getting this off the ground in the middle school, and then it also is here at the high school. You'll see that with Mr. Harrison later this spring. High school is up again for their presentation next week, as well as the musical. But I also want to thank the students for their work in changing the culture of the middle school. Every step we take forward is one step to the goal, and the goal will never end. And we need to keep striving to make things better for all of our schools that are in our schools every day, big people and little people. So I just want to thank you and thank you, Mrs. Sussman, for everything.
Thank you.
Dr. Rohr, would you
Yeah.
have them come around and meet the board,
Yeah.
please?
Right up there and around.
Nice to meet you. Hi, Anissa.
Hi, Emma. Hi, Matthew. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
We'll have
Well, again, thank you, Ms. Esner, ladies, and Mr. Rohr for bringing that to our attention, explaining Avidum. Moving on to introduction of guests. I have 3 blue cards up here tonight. I'll just go through my little script here. This is a point in the meeting where we open to public comment. As per our policy 903, public participation in board meetings usually have copies up front. Public comment is limited to 30 minutes in total. Each participant is limited to 5 minutes in duration. I'm sorry, I've got some feedback that I need to stick to that, so we will stick to that. Each participant shall announce their name and township of residence, please. Public participants may express their concerns over school operations and programs, but may not address complaints about school personnel or other persons. All comments shall be directed to the board only. Any participant may or may not yield his or her time to any other person. Campaigning for political candidate is not permitted, and defamatory, uncivil, harassing, or rude comments are unacceptable. So the first card, again, I do just in random order, Mr. Trimber, Ed Trimber.
Good evening, Ed Trimber, Pike Township. Part of me doesn't even feel comfortable talking about what we seen the other night from this book. Hopefully by now, all of you have read that excerpt from the book, and I hope agree with me that short of nothing that's pornographic in word, and I don't know how else to explain it. And I don't know how you would explain that being needed to explain anything. Even if you were going to explain the act that it was committed in that book, there's other ways of doing it without being so graphic. That being said, part of me wants to go scorched earth on whoever let that go through, but I'm not going to do that because it's a problem that happened, and hopefully it's a problem that we can fix as a group, as a community. I think there needs to be some checks and balances. If that's a curriculum thing that people are reviewing, somehow that got through. In my line of work, I'm the last line. When something goes south, it's on me. So my personal opinion, if we want to blame the curriculum for letting it go through, that's all well and good, but that's not going to fix the problem. The problem comes down to the last person that had that book in their hand, that handed it to the student, who's probably going to know it better than the curriculum or the board or anybody else. You had to be sleeping under a rock in the last year and a half to see something like that and say to yourself, oh, this isn't going to be a problem with our community if our kids get this at home and read it. I mean, really, if I were to say some of those things that were written in that book at a board meeting somewhere, I would be reprimanded and probably made to take some kind of training course. That's how graphic I think that is. And that's not acceptable at any age level in school. I don't care whether you see it at home or you think they're seeing it on their own on their phones. That's not our job to promote that kind of stuff. So again, if you were trying to explain that situation, there's 1,000 other words you could have used in 1,000 other ways. And now I only read the 2 pages on that particular situation. I don't know what the rest of the book is about. And I personally don't really care because the context doesn't matter because that's all I've seen. And that's enough to say if they were trying to explain something away, there could have been a better way to do that. So I'm asking the board to put some more checks and balances involved when it comes to reading the curriculum and going through it, and put some responsibility on the teachers. I mean, at the end of the day, again, it's up to me as being the last line of defense. If I do my job wrong and someone gets hurt, that's my responsibility. That's not my boss's. Now, on the other side of the coin, if I have a procedure that I'm told to do, and it raises my eyebrows to go, wow, that could hurt somebody, my responsibility to take it back to my supervisor and say, hey, is this really what we're doing? Because this doesn't look acceptable to me. I would have thought if the teacher would have taken that to Dr. Shanks, she would have probably went, pick something else. That's my hopes. That being said, when it comes to allowing people to speak, why all of a sudden we're changing those rules to allow people outside of our community that are not paying taxes here to be able to come and influence this board? This is our school district. And if you were a student here, I get that. But if you live somewhere else now, what do you care at this point? Go to your local school board and make a difference there. Don't come here. All of a sudden, now because we have a petitions that's being passed around, we're going to change all how we do things. And I just think it's kind of fishy. So when you look at that, the new proposals for changing stuff, think long and hard about that. It's still our school district.
Thank you. Next card I have is Ms. Berry, Debbie Berry.
Good evening, Debbie Berry, Oley Township.
Thank you.
Came here tonight because I was watching a Zoom previously of a previous meeting. I was at home, one of my kids were sick, and someone had brought up a teacher's social media. And I found that kind of interesting that anyone would bring up social media after seeing the social media of some members of this board. So, speaking of that, I'd like to know where the board stands on anti-American, pro-Russian, pro-Putin posts of Russian tanks that look superior to American tanks to make American tanks look like they're nothing, like they couldn't fight a war. Where does the board stand on this? Do you like these anti-American posts? It was said that board members have freedom of speech, and you do. Everybody has freedom of speech. It's one of those things protected, by those pink tanks. That is correct, but what you do not have is freedom from consequences of that speech. The same as I can't yell fire in a building, a crowded building. You should not be able to provide hate speech that rings in children's ears for decades to come. You had the middle school speaking tonight about how love and acceptance and how all should be treated. Yet this board lets open bigotry, racism, sexism, anti-homophobic, anti-LGBTQ plus stuff. You let it wide open, and now you're gonna let anti-American stuff go too. So my question is, where is the line in the sand for this board? How much is allowed to be said that will ring in these children's ears for decades to come? Because it's not your vote that these kids hear, see, and care about. It's the words spoken in this room that then filter out to the hallways of that building and the middle school and the elementary school. Speaking of the elementary school, I hear it over and over again in this room how racism does not happen, how racism isn't real. I have a first grader who came off the bus with tears welling in her eyes, asking me why the kid next to her doesn't want to sit with her because their family is racist. My daughter didn't even know what racism meant at 7 years old. I had to explain it to her. So for all the parents that sit in this room and say racism doesn't happen, my middle school daughter, a boy had to be punished twice this year, twice, because he said the N-word to her. Once while his body was pressed against hers, saying he could say anything he wanted, including that word. It was to the point that Dr. Rohr called the police. So every time I hear racism doesn't happen, it's easy to say for someone whose kids have never experienced it in this school district. That's all I have to say tonight. And I ask the board that you please decide where your line in the sand is on what's allowed to be said in this room. And when will you be happy? Will it be when one of these children get hurt by the actions and the words spoken in this room?
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. And the last card I have is Ms. Coral, Candace Coral.
Candace Coral, Pike Township. So I thought it was great what the kids brought here. I think that mentorship program is going to be wonderful. I see now in corporate world mentor programs all the time. It's probably one of the most fabulous things to get kids to kind of, or not kids, but us adults, what we can call kids at times, but us to kind of bring ourselves up in the corporate world and become executives in the future. So I think that this is a great program that we're doing, and you guys introducing that just fits well in what I see in Oley community. Particularly, I wanted to bring up the curriculum committee, and there was 2 items under there, 3 and 4, which were motions to approve the Folium Inc. Laurel Life Services. For some reason I thought it said life sciences before, but we talked about this on Monday, and I was a little speechless when I heard the response on what these 2 motions were to represent. And I know I'm not going to say it as well as Dr. Shank said it, but these are children that have problems, right? They have PTSD, they have issues that have happened in their life that could be detrimental. It's something like a support group that came here that talked about that they could also help those children with along the lines. But the one part that I think stood out the most was talking about those children that kind of felt like they have been left behind by maybe their own parents. And when you think about COVID and everything that we've just gone through, these children have been in front of their parents for days, for hours, and their parents have been watching them perform the tasks that they needed to. And they leave that space and they come back into the school, and they're so used to having that attention that they now no longer have. And these kids are falling behind because they're craving this sense of attention that they're never going to get again. We created a different type of normal in their eyes that they want to go back to, which is why you'll see kids starting to disconnect now from doing any type of activities after school because they want to rush home. You're going to see kids disconnect from volunteering where they may have volunteered before or standing up to take extra assignments. And I think we need to find a middle ground because parents, on the other hand, are complaining that their children are constantly involved in school stuff. They go to school, they come home at 4, they have homework to do, they have sporting events, they have other things to go to help them build that resume that they need for college, but there's no family time built into this curriculum. So I'm not just saying this for Oley as us not having that. I'm just saying it's just the standard way of school throughout the world. So I'm asking, could we potentially come to some type of agreement that maybe we start taking away days of homework, give families back that time to spend with their kids, and hopefully we'll see a difference in these kids that feel that they're maybe being neglected from their parents because there's just so much going on. Not to mention parents have busy lives, but that's kind of what I wanted to bring up here. I'm hoping that maybe we can come up with something to help both the families, the children, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coral. That's the only cards I have. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. Thanks again for everybody. Solicitor report, Mr. May.
No report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mancuso. Administrative report, Dr. Shank.
No report tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Shank. We'll move on to committee reports. Budget and Finance, Dr. Markley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 2 motions for action. If any board member would like me to split them up, I will do so, but we did discuss these on Monday evening. I would take them as they are written, 1 and 2.
No objections. Dr. Markley moves the motions 1 and 2 as proposed. Mrs. Atkins seconds those motions. Any further questions or comments on motions 1 and 2? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Pfeiffer.
Yes.
Backen.
Yes.
Heckman.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Keller.
Yes.
Markley.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Pollock.
Yes.
Jacken.
Yes.
Motions 1 and 2 are approved.
Under information, the Berks County School District's Health Trust meeting minutes of November 17th, 2021 are presented. Upcoming meeting dates are March 21st and April 25th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. That's it for budget and finance.
Thank you, Dr. Markley. Moving on to personnel, Mr. Heckman.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. Personnel has 5 motions tonight. 1 through 4 were reviewed on Monday evening, and number 5 was mentioned, as well as the resume for the individual was sent to us on Tuesday. So if it pleases the board, I'd like to take 1 through 5 as listed.
Hearing no objections, Mr. Heckman moves the motions 1 through 5 as listed. Mr. Jackson seconds that motion. Any questions or comments on 1 through 5? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Fatkin,
Yes.
Heckman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Markley,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Pollock,
Yes.
Zacken,
Yeah.
Piper.
Yes.
Motions 1 through 5 are approved.
Thank you. And for information, our next meeting is April 4th, and that's all I have for personnel, Mr. Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heckman. Moving on to policy, Dr. Fatkin.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. We have one action for tonight, and that is to approve the following new policies, 200 section for the first reading as listed.
Dr. Fatkin moves a motion 1 as listed. Ms. Piper seconds the motion. We amend that to say also we have 11.1 and 9.3 in there since it just says section 200. No worries. Okay, so the motion has been moved and second. Any questions or comments on the motion?
Yeah, I did ask the question. Is there a difference between 30-day review and first reading?
Go ahead.
So the first reading is what you're approving tonight, and then there'll be a 30-day review by the public before the second reading. That's part of your policies and how policies are adopted.
Any other questions?
Did you have a chance to change adjust the 903 as it was recommended?
There was no final discussion on what they're doing with 903. There were not 5 board members who had directed me to make any changes. It was supposed to be brought back for discussion at the next meeting, was my understanding of the discussion at the board meeting. So on the April 4th meeting, then those 2 items that were brought up regarding alumni and community organizations would be separate discussion items under Dr. Fatkin's committee for the board to make direction at that point to make modifications or not make modifications at that time.
Can we vote then separately on the policies? Every 903.011.1 and the rest of them.
You want to separate those out?
Yeah.
We're only voting to move them on to,
So
we're not approving them tonight. We're just,
okay, so they're still going to allow us to make
absolutely, yeah.
changes for the future.
right. This initiates a 30-day review for the whole public and
Okay.
then next
Thank
in April, we'll sit in here again and one
Okay.
more time before then we'll go out for another final 30-day review.
Then you make your changes because you couldn't come to consensus on Monday night as to what changes you wanted to make.
Right.
So then on the 4th, then you make your final decisions as to are you making changes, are you not making changes on multiple items on policy. Then I either make the changes, make some changes, make no changes, depending what 5 of non-board members direct me to do. And then they come back to you at the meeting for second, would have set for 30 days because the meeting, you only have 1 meeting in April. So then they will sit with those changes that 5 of 9 board members want for approval on the 20th.
We won't really be approving these until May.
No, you approve them in
In
April.
April, we will, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
30 days in April, because today's the 9th.
got it. Okay, so any other questions on it?
No, thank you.
Okay, we don't have to do a voice vote, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion 1 carries.
Under information, next meeting date is April 4th.
Thank you, Dr. Fatkin. Thank you. Moving on to curriculum, back to Dr. Markley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 6 motions for action this evening. We discussed all 6 on Monday night. If you'd like me to pull any out, I certainly will do that for the board. I'd like to take all 6 as listed.
No objections. Dr. Markley moves the motions 1 through 6 as listed. Mrs. Piper seconds the motions. Any questions or comments on these? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Jackson,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Markley,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Pollock,
Yes.
Zacken,
Yes.
Piper,
Yes.
Fatkin,
Yes.
Heckman.
Yes.
Motions 1 through 6 are approved as listed.
Our next meeting day is April 4th, 2022. That's all for curriculum.
Thank you again, Dr. Markley. Moving on to property and transportation, Mrs. Piper.
To approve motions 1 through 7 through 18 has been discussed on Monday. If you want anybody to take vote on one separately, then let me know. Otherwise, vote on them as it is. As a whole.
Mrs. Piper moves the motions 1 through 18 as listed. Dr. Markley seconds the motion. Again, these are discussed on Monday, but anybody have any questions or comments on 1 through 18? Give me a minute to take a look at them again. Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Keller,
Yes.
Markley,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Pollock,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
Piper,
Yes,
Bracken.
Yes.
Beckman.
Yes.
Jackson. Yes.
next meeting is April 4th.
Motions 1 through 18 are approved. Thank you for, yes, thank you, Mrs. Piper. Student activities, Mrs. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. We have 7 motions for action tonight. I'd like to take 1 and 6 as listed since we discussed those on Monday night, and then we'll take 7 separately.
Okay, so Mrs. Jackson moves on motions 1 through 6 as listed. Mr. Heckman seconds that motion. Any questions or comments on motions 1 through 6? Even though it's an anonymous donation, can we send a thank you card to whoever it was?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I know who it is. But doesn't want to be recognized publicly.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Markley,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Pollock,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
Piper,
Yes,
Bracken.
Yes.
Beckman.
Yes.
Jackson. Yes. Keller.
Yes.
Motions 1 through 6 are approved.
I'd like to take motion 7 as an action statement to approve the following field trip request for Mrs. Rice and Ms. Jodelsky and approximately 8 students to attend the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's Susquehanna Watershed Environmental Education Program Middle School Environthon Canoe Education Program on May 24th, 7:15 to 2:15 at a cost of $54.76.
Mrs. Jackson moves on motion number 7.
I'll second it.
Mr. Keller seconds the motion. Any questions or comments on motion number 7? Sounds like a fun trip.
That'd be nice.
It'd be kind of cool in that water in May. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Perry,
Yes.
Pollock,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
Piper,
yes,
Bracken.
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Markley.
Yes.
Motion 7 is approved.
Okay, and under information, our next meeting will be April 4th.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Legislative Committee, Mrs. Zakin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no action items, but if anyone is interested in writing letters of support to the members of Congress and the Senate and the House of Representatives to extend the school meal waiver through September 30th, 2023. It's set to expire June 30th. So if you're interested in doing some advocacy, it would be great to send letters to Senator Bob Casey, Senator Patrick Toomey, and Representative Dan Muser. Thank you.
is there any way to post them on maybe like communication things, so on the website?
PSBA had sent
Or link it
a
to
link.
where the,
Yes,
yes,
yeah.
so it would be easy to find the address.
All you have to do is press that link and it goes right to them.
Thank you, Mrs. Zakin. BCIU, Mrs. Jackson again.
Thank you. We have not had a meeting since last time. There is information on the website that's listed there if you'd like to take a look at it. Our next meeting will be March 17th and then April 20th.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Ag Advisory, Mr. Keller.
Nothing new to report. Next meeting date, March 24th, and then the ag banquet is April 7th.
Thank you. Do we ever get a number for that?
No,
Yellow House thing?
I didn't. I've been,
No, I was just curious.
I didn't,
How much money they
It
made out of
usually
Yellow House?
takes a while.
it probably
It
takes.
takes a while.
Fair enough. Just was always curious.
Yeah, it's
They'll,
great.
they should, they'll usually report it out at the ag budget.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Under negotiations, I have nothing to report at this time. BCTC, Mr. Heckman.
Thank you again, Mr. Pollock. I have a motion to approve the BCTC proposed budget for the 2022-2023 school year in the amount of $840,859 as presented.
Mr. Heckman moves a motion number 1. Keller seconds the motion. Questions or comments on the BCTC budget? Yeah, I think we discussed this. No surprises, right?
No, as I said, the big thing is we, by our articles of agreement, the Career and Technology Center is responsible for transportation. That stays in this budget. And the year-to-year average increase is about 2.8%.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Pollock,
Yes.
Zakin,
Yes.
Piper,
Yes,
Bracken,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Markley.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Motion 1 is approved.
Thank you so much for your support for our budget. Information, our JOC briefs and minutes have been distributed. Our next meetings are March 23rd at the East Campus and April 27th at the West Campus. And also as a follow-up, I mentioned that the administration from the Berks Career and Technology Center has extended an offer to provide a tour of the East Campus to this board, but also in talking to Dr. Stauffer earlier in the week. I'd also like to take us over for a quick view of the student built house. We did see the house back in the fall when it was under construction. Certainly it's not finished, but there's a lot of work that's been done that we can see. So a quick tour of the student built house. And also we could potentially, if the weather's decent, we could have a trip down to the quarry area where we have the heavy equipment construction. It's a new program for Career and Technology Center. We've had diesel mechanics for many, many years. Now we're actually have the equipment available and we're teaching students to operate that heavy equipment. We're also putting an acre, Dr. Shank, I don't know if anybody said anything to you about this, but at the East Campus, we have an acre that's going to be set aside for working the large equipment also. It's going to be close to the elementary school, certainly not near the boundary, but I ask that you be part of that discussion so you're at least aware of what's going on with that.
You know how deep they're going to go?
I don't know.
Until they find the gold.
It's the water table.
Yeah, well, again, that's why I think it's important that you be part of that discussion.
Thank you.
So that'll be coming up.
We have big packets. Our meeting is.
Yeah, yeah. And again, the tour is May 10th, adjusted time of 9 a.m. outside the East Campus, and we'll hopefully look forward to having a good tour. That's what I have, Mr. Pollock. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heckman. EIT, TCC, Mr. Wang.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. I don't have a report tonight, and the next meeting is March 31st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. Communications, Ms. Berry.
I have no information items, just the next meeting date is April 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Secretary's report, Dr. Shank.
The lists of upcoming activities district-wide are listed for your review through the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shank. Under other, I have a motion that's to ratify the 2022 Health and Safety Plan and Exclusion Chart as presented. The mask on district provided transportation is optional as of February 24, 2022. Mrs. Atkins seconds that motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? Anything else on that, Dr. Shank? We should, aside from masks, I thought somebody said the other night.
Well, the other thing that we pulled off is there's no longer a requirement that if by some really strange chance that we would have to close due to COVID, we no longer have to close down extracurricular activities on that day, as long as those events are not impacted by the COVID closure.
Got it. Any other questions or comments from the board? Roll call vote, please.
Zakin?
Yes.
Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Batkin?
Yes.
Beckman?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Keller?
Yes.
Markley?
Yes.
Perry?
Yes.
Pollock?
Yes, motion approved. And under information is reported that the Oley Valley School District utilized a flexible instruction day on Friday, February 25th due to inclement weather. Do we have any unfinished business?
Welcome. One item I'd like to bring up, we talked about it a little bit the other night, but I just wanted to bring everybody's attention to the Mosaic concert that was held last week on Thursday and Friday at the high school. It was the 5th annual Mosaic concert. For those who were there, I think we were all wowed with the level of entertainment, mostly orchestrated by our own students. You had flutes in the back, you had bands in the front, you had students all over the place. I understand there were 280 students from the high school that participated in that concert. And I know university levels perform Mosaic concerts or something like the Mosaic concert. I think we stole the idea from a certain university. But the way our students have been able to carry it out, certainly Mr. Giffen and Mrs. Lynch as directors bring so much to the table for our students. But to see our students up there having fun, genuinely enjoying their own performances and the like, and the fact that they actually, from a leadership standpoint, run so much of what happens, it's just fantastic. So if anybody was not able to see it, I'd say in the future, get to a Mosaic concert. And I believe, Dr. Shank, somebody's working on a YouTube.
It was posted last night.
Oh, it was,
Yeah,
okay,
we-
super.
We got it up at about 9:30 last night. It is posted. We just had some editing to do on that. Yes, and they had about just 230 students, and we have about 468 here at the high school, so we're over 50% involved in that. And that's that was participating. And the numbers are even higher when you have the stage crew and the support personnel that were involved in that. And the entire department was present, whether they were running stage crew, they were performing on stage, whether they were helping with like with custodial duties, whether we were on supervision or whatever. But it was really nice to see all our teachers, K through 12, working together collaboratively to provide that. And then I'd also like to do a shout out to our 8th grade musicians who did come up to participate as well, which is the first year for that. And in the string area, and then in the band area, our 8th graders will be coming up to participate in our Memorial Day Parade here in Oley. So we're doing more articulation between the middle school and the high school under the leadership of our department. So very proud of them and very grateful for all that they give and the time and dedication beyond the school day that they go underappreciated a lot. Very grateful. Watching what's happening to a lot of music departments and budget cuts in other school districts and the lack of support. We need continue to support them and really be grateful for what they do. It's amazing watching them.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Hickman. Any other unfinished business?
I just had a question about sort of an addendum or a addition to our discussion the other evening, the end of the meeting. Dr. Shank made mention that there was an option on the syllabus to read another book.
You can ask for an option.
You can ask, okay.
Yeah.
So do you have a list of those options prepared or?
Yes. Yeah, the teachers do, that you could pick from.
Okay, so would it be something we could do procedurally that would say, okay, here's what we'd like to read. Here's a G-rated option. Put it right on the syllabus.
Yeah, that's
I mean, just so it's more clear, rather than, if that pops up, here's an option, here's option A, option B.
And you mean just put it on the, when they like back, explain it back to school night for parents who.
Yeah, just add that to,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not quite sure how you would word it, but something.
We do that.
Yeah.
We do that in health. We do that in social.
But that might clear things up a little easier and pop out at people quicker.
Yeah. Normally, the statement is just if opposition to any of the books that are required reading, please contact your teacher if certain assignments are provided. That's our basic, whether we're teaching mythology, whether we're teaching Shakespeare, whether Edgar Allan Poe in the middle school. I mean, we have books that people could challenge at any grade level. So it's kind of universal K through 12 that if you have an objection to anything that we're providing, usually elementary, it has to do with our health curriculum, what people feel is appropriate or not appropriate. Middle school gets into a little bit more into ELA, gets into some social studies topics. High school gets into Greek mythology, Roman history, gets into world cultures. It gets into all that. Our blanket is if you as a parent don't like this, here's your options. And you contact the first line is always contact the teacher. And the thing about public school is that it's parent choice. And then we have all the lineups are always approved as to what that is. And it's different for different parents based on their own values, their own morals, their own experiences. And that's why we do it the way we do it.
Right. If anybody has any ideas to make it.
Yeah, we're talking about that now.
Pop out at you a little, so you get, oh yeah, no, wait a minute here. Maybe I need to look here. That's all.
Well, and also teachers are more familiar with the material, correct? So can they send a note for the parent to notify, okay, this is the books and curriculum that if you're concerned, you may really want to take a second look. I would not be familiar with a lot of United States books. So it would be hard for me as a parent, and I'm sure there are parents from different countries also here in Oley School District. So that would be probably prudent to notify parents.
That's why they provide the syllabus at the beginning of the school year and send it home for parents. And usually a lot of them require the syllabus to be signed in return.
Can we start doing that?
What?
What you're saying, most of the teachers require.
Yeah.
Can we make that standard for everybody?
We could, but the problem is that we have a lot of parents who refuse to sign the syllabus, just as we have parents who refuse to sign the student handbook acknowledgement form. We asked us just say that we sent the student handbook form, please acknowledge you received, and they refused to sign it.
Yeah, we went through that many years.
They refused to sign the medical forms.
Refused to sign medical forms, everything.
Yeah, Parents don't sign it. They don't sign the student handbook. They refuse to sign the syllabuses. They refuse to sign.
They
and that's your-
refuse, or they're that.
No, they
negligent?
refuse, outright refuse. Because we'll follow up. We make the calls. We do school messengers. We do all that emails, and they'll send back, I refuse to
Well,
sign it.
I still would prefer that
Yeah,
everybody would just,
they get the option. It's presented to them. I hear what you're saying. If they refuse to send it back, then that's up to them.
Right,
that's
but the
exactly,
syllabus
that's
is-
what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the syllabuses are sent home at the beginning of the year, and most of the social studies and English do require it because of the novels on the list. I mean, they send it home, they go over it back to school night for the parents who do show up to back to school night, meet the teacher night, as we call it. They do go over all of that there, go over their syllabus, their expectations for the secondary level. Middle school does too, because they've changed a lot of their novels over the years too, and then they're much more into modern literature because that's what students will read. We start teaching Shakespeare in 6th and 7th grade. It's just that, modern literature is going to reflect modern times. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, that's just the way it is. Just that time people object to Shakespeare. Because even though it's a classic, people object to Grapes of Wrath and the Chocolate War and some of the Steinbeck stuff. And I mean, it doesn't matter what you're reading, there's always going to be the potential for rejection. But we're in discussion with that now based on Monday night's discussion. And the English department stands by their choice selections and the reasons they're why. And talking with them after, what you brought up on Monday, I revisited all of the rationale as to why they selected what they did. And I think the biggest, and I get those 2 pages, and I'm not downplaying those 2 pages, please don't get me wrong. But I guess the part of the piece of and I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but I will anyway, because it's just me. But that particular topic is one as a public school that I have dealt with high school students and even college alumni who come back, who do not know how to handle that situation and have not been exposed to that situation. And unfortunately, as much as I know your views on Title IX, and I respect that, that's where all the changes in Title IX and all the procedures and policies and lawsuits and all the other stuff that are going on is because of that. And that book's content, if you read beyond those 2 pages, like you said, rip those 2 pages out and read the novel in its entirety, also teach how to handle that particular situation and when and if it happens. And unfortunately, the number of our students, whether they are in middle school or whether they are, as the squirrel pointed out, whether they're in elementary school, that unfortunately have faced that situation is growing on an annual basis, let alone our young people who are going to college. And nothing against Penn State, but that's a big place, that can get into a situation they don't, or in the workplace and don't know how to handle or how to report, or what do I do if I see, what do I do if I don't? And that is graphic. And we are looking at those pages. Don't get me wrong. I'm not condoning that, but the concept behind, that's why I keep saying to people, I get the pages, but read the book in its entirety and the depth of the discussion. Because one of the things that I was, as an educator, was offended by was that our kids don't understand the depth of discussion among 9th graders in those CP level classes, not on the giggling or the content or this or whatever. They didn't focus on the 2 pages. And honestly, most of them probably didn't even read the whole book, because I don't know most kids in high school that actually read all the novels except your top literature kids. They scan and watch the movie and Google the answers because that's what they do. We all did it. We had the yellow books, and with the yellow and black covers, except Dr. Markley, he read everything. But the concept of the depth of the conversation about the reality of they know people in their classes that have been in difficult situations, and now they know how to help, or the concept of behavior and how to, like Avidum tonight, how do we help our friends? And that depth of that, and what we call critical response writing, and how to respond to that, and the depth of the knowledge of that, not only that book, but many of the books that we've implemented over the last 2 or 3 years in changing what we're doing and how we're doing it, is causing a higher level critical thinking in their world. Like, we don't dwell on the graphic part of it. It's kind of like skim that and keep going. Sort of like when you fast forward to a movie at home, on certain parts of it in your home, you have that choice as a parent. We kind of skim through that part and get to the context of the book. But the maturity and the level of discussion and the level of the writing, which has always been one of our weaknesses in 12 years, has been really fascinating for me to watch. When I can look at it from where I was an assistant superintendent in 2011 to where it is today and the maturity level of the masses in those CP level classes and how they're handling the discussion and dialogue among their peers and how the teachers are facilitating those dialogues in the overall concepts of what do we do when, how do we help, how do we change this, how do we stop this? Sort of like you heard from the young people from the middle school tonight. So that's why I'm like, I get that piece and we are addressing that piece of that book. But there's a piece in those young people's world that, and I get in your household, you're probably dealing with that with your children and you're all over that. But I can tell you, I've met with a young man today who barely ever sees his mom. So those conversations are not going to happen in his house. And in public school, we educate all students. And whether mom and dad is home, whether mom and dad's sitting at the table, sort of like I had one of my updates with you guys. You asked me the other night about mental health, and I didn't want to drag the meeting on any further, but one of the biggest problems out of COVID that we're seeing with mental health is some of our students, even high school students, let alone our littlest people, or finally for the first time know what it's like to sit down to dinner with their parents every night, or have them help as much as a drug parent's nuts, help them to do their work online or to do their homework or what that, because you're all stuck in the house together. Whether that was positive stuck in the house in some households or a negative stuck in the house in households. But for a lot of our students, more than people realize, that was the first time they had their parents' undivided attention. And then all of a sudden life goes to normal. Everybody goes back to their world. And the kids are going, what did I do wrong that dad doesn't have spend time with me anymore? He comes home from work, he does whatever dads do when they, before COVID. I'm working on my stuff, and now all of a sudden he's too tired, too busy, or whatever, versus quarantine, everybody was together. But in the mind of a 7th grader or a 5th grader, they look at themselves going, what did I do wrong? And then they're not, you have to kind of unwind that. It's not them, it's just, this is our new normal. Plus then you have all the stressors of finances in the world, and how do you explain to a 7th grader what's happening into Ukraine when they're afraid that, the world's gonna end, or because they're not used to war. They don't understand it other more than they read it in their textbook. So it's a whole different world perspective from them than it was when we were in school, or when even the last generation was in school. But, we are addressing those pages and we are working on all of that. But the depth of the concept and the maturity of our students, even in middle school, and talking with Mr. Bagenstos in 7th grade, in what they're reading and the dialogue that is coming is, we kind of sometimes sell our kids short. And we've first pretty much finished with that book in 9th grade. And talking to the teachers, like they were just, and even last year and this year, they were just kind of wowed by the discussion and not because you never know sometimes. I mean, when I came here in 2011, they were teaching a child called It. And that book is all about mental health. And I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but in what happens in families. And it brought a lot of mental health stuff out of kids that never came out before, and nobody was prepared to deal with it. And then there's some other books that over the years and courses. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong or whatever, it's running its process, it's doing its thing. But in my conversations with the English teachers, based on our conversations here on Monday night, what I was most impressed was with the level of the CP level classes, the depth and understanding of the conversations that are occurring around that topic of how to, this is wrong and this needs to stop, and how to.
Right. Well, don't misunderstand. I point that it was making, you could have done a lot cleaner.
Correct.
That's my problem.
Yeah,
But I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree that needs to be brought up and discussed.
Correct.
And I haven't heard if that happened yet.
It's
exactly.
I think she sent you the forms to fill out.
Oh, yeah. But I'm talking about in class, that did they actually discuss that?
Well, they don't really discuss those 2 pages.
But they almost actually should, because it's actually a very important thing to discuss.
If you read the whole book and you get to the end of the book, then you'll understand where it comes from. You have to read the book minus those. I mean, it's almost like
you could literally glue those pages together and the teacher could say, this is what happened, clean it up, and then move on. And then you would still get the
basically we skip those 2 pages and then they go on.
And he or she could just explain this.
We don't even have to explain it. You can get the context for the page before and the page after.
All right.
And then when you get to the end of the book,
clear, then that's
and then when you get to the end of the book, it really does make sense as to what the
I
concept.
absolutely appreciate that
I'm sorry, I didn't.
discussion. No, I'm not saying that, I am not saying that yet the entire tone of the book is bad or wrong.
It
It's
could
just
come down
that
as simple
was
as
the
taking those
scariest
2
part.
pages out of the book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all.
Which I think we did with
I'm
flowers
on
for
board
Algernon at one
with
point.
everything
We
you
took a
just
page
said.
out of the book and, you know what I mean? Then you go from page, I don't know, 33 to 37. If somebody's that hard to find out what's on page 34, then they go home and look it up on your computer because they're not going to get it on ours. But
Wow.
do you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Like, because sometimes when it's not there, it draws attention to it. But the concept of the book, when you get through the whole bigger picture of that book, has led to a greater depth of understanding.
I can see how it would.
You know what I mean?
With that being in it, I can see
But
just a page or two I read after and a
the
couple other
positiveness
spots.
of what
I
can
see
come
the-
out
the
of
message.
modern literature to change what is happening in their world, so to speak. But the dialogue about those 2 pages that you brought up, yes, is under discussion with the English department. But I was very impressed with what is happening in those classrooms, not with just that book in particular, but with a lot of the literature that's coming as we are moving towards project-based, we're still moving towards project-based. I know the timer's gonna go off. Yeah, project-based, but more into, instead of less of this and more of explaining and being able to look you in the eye and say, this is why I believe what I do, and let me support it by the text. Instead of let me look it up on my phone and then read back to what somebody else said. Or let me write a response to what I think or feel and then write it out and be able to support it versus let me cut and paste it from somebody else. So where the English department is heading, because that is one of the weakest skills that we have, which the scores will show, but it's also one of the hardest skills to teach. But to have a 9th grade be able to do that at a different level than even our English teachers have seen before, it's a step in the right direction. And I'm not saying this is the only bump in the road we're going to have. I don't know any educator out there that will tell you that you're not going to find another book somewhere or another article or another short story that somebody may object to. But the process is working, but we're not going to be perfect in the process. So for that, I do apologize that it came up that way, but we will make some adjustments on the back end. But the education end of it is getting us to where we need to make sure these young people are getting what they need to know how to handle certain situations when they don't have the parents to go to and say, Dad, what do I do? Or Mom, what do I do? This happened to me, or I don't know. Because honestly, in the last 3 years alone, I've had to deal with that too many times with people here in the middle school, and unfortunately now in 4th and 5th grade. So and I'm not saying we dwell on that topic, but in their world, it's happening to them and their friends. So when I hear from people that, oh, our kids are innocent, they don't know, they're living it in their own world, which is sad. And they talk about it in school, because just as that you had made the comment about schools being safe havens from the topic, we're also, for a lot of our students, and more every year, we are the only safe haven they have to even bring up the topic. So it kind of is like double-edged sword. You can't necessarily in public school, you can't really hide from it, but at the same time, we aren't going to lay it out there for the world to see, but we have to walk that very thin tightrope across the Grand Canyon of where we are, because for every parent that is doing what they need to do and parenting their kid and on top of their student and making sure they're doing what they need to do, and then we have the others that may not see their parent for days because who knows where they are, or they're being raised by grandparents. So try talking to a 70 or 80-year-old grandparent whose education wasn't even anything like ours was in the the 80s or the 90s, who has no frame of reference when you're back in the 40s and 50s in school trying to raise an elementary student in today's world. So Dave, here's my comment. I knew you'd do that tonight, but so we are working on that. I'll keep you informed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Could I ask a couple questions? Do you know if this book is properly marked? I understand it's in the high school library. Am I correct?
I don't have the high school library list with me to look at.
I just learned tonight that my own child was able to receive this book if in the middle school, was sent from the high school to her without my knowledge. So and she goes, it wasn't even properly marked.
What do you mean properly marked?
So it was not age appropriate or something, or it has to have a parent to sign it off.
There are no parent sign-offs for books in the library. That's not what public schools do. And that book is marketed, that book is really 8th through 10th grade.
And as a parent, you leave me with no choice to see what my kid can pick up in the school library, even if I feel it's not appropriate.
Then you send it back in and tell her to return the library book. That's your right as a parent.
I don't even know what books she's getting signed in because that totally bypassed me as a parent. She can sign out apparently every book.
Right,
So-
she can sign it out, but
You don't want her to read it, then you tell her not to read it and
Right.
you send it back in.
I don't, you want to like behind the counter or something, or I'm not really sure what you're
No,
saying.
this is, I don't find this book appropriate, and I do prefer to actually discuss those things with my own child
Okay,
on my own.
And that's your choice.
So, correct. But right now, I felt like I was left without a choice because my child was allowed to pick up this book without me even my knowledge on any way, shape, or form.
but how does marking the book change that?
Well, like movies, PG-13, so there's certain things, is there some kind of checks and balances? That
The only way to
gives
do that would be
us-
to take it off the shelf and put it behind the librarian and have to ask.
No, the checks and balances in the sense that if there is an appropriate content or the,
But that's all,
And then-
that depends on what system are you using as appropriate content? Because for every list of, like I said to a parent yesterday, for every banned book list that you find, you will find another list that says that that book is appropriate. And yes, we have interlibrary books that go from one building from middle school to high school and high school to middle school, depending on the reading level of the child. We have university learning libraries that we pull stuff in from, a lot of times from RAC, Alvernia, Albright, and other universities that students can request. And if a parent doesn't want the book, their child to read it when it comes home, then they send it back in.
so
And then
basically,
otherwise, you can say to your child, and I have had some parents say to your child, they are not permitted to sign out books in the library. So if you want to control what your child signs out in the library, then you come in at for you, it would be 2:25 because it's the end of the school day in the middle school. Then you come in with your child at 2:25 and you go into the library with Mrs. Robinson and you walk around with your child and you pick out the library books that you want your child to have. At the high school, you would come at 2:45 and you with your child and you would walk around and pick out your books with them. And the librarian would know that your child is not permitted to sign out library books. It's sort of like the same thing we do in the cafeteria. There's some parents who do not want their children eating potato chips and Cheetos for lunch, so they're not allowed to have a la carte. And we mark that on the computer that Mrs. Corl's third grade daughter is not allowed to have Cheetos for lunch. She's only allowed to have, I just thought I'd use that example. Like, can't have Cheetos for lunch. She has to eat the whatever's for lunch that day. So she's not allowed to purchase extras. So if you want to say my child is not allowed to check out a library book without your, then we mark it in the system that says your child's not allowed to check out a library book. It's that simple. You have a parent, you have that choice.
no, because it seems like to be a little bit of controversial. On the one hand, we're saying, yes, when there's curriculum is presented, let parents review and sign it. On the other hand, unless the parent prohibits the child to sign books, period, they can have access it otherwise through the library. The same books as the parent is gonna, supervise through the curriculum or whatever it was the assignment. Yet here's a back door through the library unless you absolutely refuse to let your child give any freedom to pick on any books in the library.
If I may, I'm trying, I think she's saying, and correct me.
Mhm.
If a child innocently, like, let's say they watch the movie and the movie's actually cleaner than the book at a spot or two, okay? I mean, if you read that in the movie, that would be a rated R movie. So, or whatever. So in other words, a kid watches the movie, says, I want to get the book, innocently has no idea that's in there. And she's not she's not necessarily going to ask her parent to, that by the way, I'm getting the book at the library. And oh, by the way, I got to look at that. You know what I'm saying? I think, is that what you're trying to say?
Correct.
Like it's too late by the time she may realize that she even has it. And we're under the impression there's nothing in here that's that bad. I guess that's the broadest brush I can paint is, as a parent, I guess I didn't think there was stuff in here that was that bad.
And that's.
And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the
No,
bus.
I
That's
understand
kind of how, I guess I just took it for
What is
granted.
bad to one person is not always bad to another
Well,
person. And that's the difference
I
between public
understand.
school in private school and parochial school. And that was a question that, I've been asked at one point, I think earlier in the fall, was how do we get such conservative values and all of these very conservative morals and all of this stuff? That's why private schools, parochial schools all exist, is because public schools have to offer options, and they have to offer all ends of the spectrum, and then it's the parent's choice as to where you want your child to follow on to that. Some parents honestly could care less. Others fall strong to the right, others fall to the left. Some go in the middle, depending on developmentally where their child is or what their home situation or backgrounds are. Some based on what their own experiences are. We as a public education have to do the whole spectrum. Parochial and private schools, I can tell you, they all swing to very conservative. They would not have their true classics. They limit even what they teach in Shakespeare because it's a different realm. Cyber charters, different realm. I think you had asked me one question sometime in the fall about how do we get all of these things in place, and I said go to New Life and start your own school. That's how you truly control all of the pieces that you want to control. And that is kind of an outlandish answer, but that's the only way, because public school has to address all students, all persons, all of the Title IX stuff, all of those pieces, because that's the premise in the United States that public education was based on back in the days of Hartman in the 1800s, in the one-room schoolhouses, which is very different than the European, the Asian systems of education, is that we do all and must provide for all, everybody from the far right to the far left and everybody in between. Parent choice makes the difference in the middle.
Okay, so that's clear. So parents' choice, in my mind, needs to be emphasized somehow, just
and that's
pop out at you a little more, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
And as we're preparing for next fall and with teachers and starting that whole process, basically starting next month, that's part of what we're talking about. It is trying, especially here at the high schools, and rewriting the middle school ELA curriculum. How can we put that more in bold, big letters for a parent that says, please read me? And if you choose not to read the big bold type that says, please read me, then that's on you. We can't hand it to you anymore as a parent, and we're already trying to hand it to you. So we're under discussion on that now. We can't, there's always a positive that comes out of a negative. Sometimes it takes a little longer to get there. And then, so we're having those discussions because the teachers at all levels have to be there, part of it, because it's not just high school. I mean, some of the things we're teaching in an elementary school. A parent could find, fault with that. They may not like it. So we need to do it systemically and not in isolation from one another.
Gotcha.
Dr. Schenk, when you said the parents can navigate through the things, and yet on the other hand, you also said that those books don't have those categories. How do you expect parents to navigate? How many?
I think somebody just said it.
Yeah. How many books do you expect people to read?
It comes down to a matter of who gets to decide what is appropriate and what's not. And we are not going to discuss that. We're not going to discuss that.
But that's for your child.
Is there
That's for you to
any,
decide for your child.
Is there a similar system like with the movies?
No.
R-rated or whatever?
I've never seen a rating system for books.
All of
Albums.
all the curriculum, just so people in the audience, because I know you don't get to hear all the backstories that go on, but we started actually a couple months ago before. Now I'm just like 3 months behind and not getting anything done these days, but the posting all of our curriculum online. So and I'll use Mrs. Coral again because her daughter's in 3rd grade. So if she wants to see what her daughter gets promoted to 9th grade next year because she's brilliant. Then she's coming into 9th grade and she wants to see what books her 9th grader may be reading. She could pull that curriculum off the list right now and read those books. Start now, go on to Audible or whatever you choose. If you don't like hardback, you want to listen to them in your car, your Audible, your iPad at the beach, wherever you're doing. Start to listen to them. You could go on to one of these condensed summary organizations, which I actually use for a lot of my professional reading, but who will give you the Cliff Note versions of it of the old days that here's the content, and then you kind of screen it and think, oh, I need to dive a little deeper in this one, but I know what Romeo and Juliet is, so I'm good with that. And figure out the ones, well, I don't know this one, maybe I need to Google it and see what comes up. Maybe I need to read this one in its entirety. Maybe I need to check with an educator in another district.
You call that a what group?
The what?
Condensed.
There's a lot of condensed, like Audible is where your books are online.
Okay.
But there's a lot of book summaries out. Like I use SoundView, which is a lot of just business books, because I read more business books than anyone, and I do education books just because education's driving me nuts right now with all its politics. But they can do, like, even some of the classics are in the short version. And there's a book out now, like literature, how to be world read in like 2 hours. And it gives you the synopsis of all the major classics that everybody should read in their lifetime. And it kind of gives you the overview of what those major books are. And then if you find one that you're like, oh, I'm not sure I really want to read Macbeth, my child reading Macbeth from Shakespeare, then maybe I want to read a little bit more into it. It gives you kind of an overview enough to go deeper or not. And then the other thing is Google. No, don't use Wikipedia. We don't allow Wikipedia, but you can Google it and it'll give you a summary of what the books are too. And then you're just like, okay, this may not be fitting my family, so maybe I want to go deeper and get the book and read it in its entirety. But those lists are on there. So the only ones that, just for the record, we cannot change are our AP Lit and AP Language courses, because if we change any of the texts that are required in any of our AP courses, it doesn't even matter if it's math or science or English or social studies, then we lose the AP accreditation. So if they require a book on AP, we have to teach it, or our students cannot take the exam. They do not get the credit. They do not get the label. And that is junior and senior year. And we do have more students doing that. But there is, I mean, you could even pull it up online if you want to read the anthology that we're using and that's listed in the curriculum that they use in 10th grade. And I can't think of what the name it is off the top of my head, but you can Google that online and it'll give you the publisher, and it'll give you a synopsis of here's all the poems and the short stories and the authors and who you're reading. And it's all there if a parent wants to take the time and just do the overview. If somebody is that concerned about it.
Right, so it's on the parent too. It's not on the school to mark the books to say what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
I was asking whether or not there's already a system.
Not that I'm aware of.
that.
No, I don't know a public school that has such a system. I don't even know of a university.
I don't know if there's a system.
I'm not.
I mean, again, who would develop that system?
Also, we'll check tonight.
Thank you.
I doubt it, but I'll find out.
I've never known one in all the schools that it's always been parent choice, and parent has options. And if you went to the number 2 choice for, say you didn't want your son reading the Perks of the Wallflower and you don't like the number 2 choice, because you're like, yeah, he's not reading that either. Then there's a number 3 choice, and then there's a number 4 choice, and then there's a number 5 choice, and you just keep down the list that are all based on that same standard or concept they're trying to teach until you find a book that you are acceptable to you and your child. And that's the one they provide the alternative assignments on.
How's it going to be when it takes place, classroom discussion based on the book?
They're not in the class. They're usually an alternative location.
No. It's like, I understand there's supposed to be a classroom discussion based on the book that we were just.
There's already
talking
been
about.
classroom discussions. The one English teacher's already done teaching the book and moving on to a new novel.
She's asking if you read an alternative book,
If you
how
read
you
an
discuss that.
alternative,
You
yes.
discuss it with the teacher.
Are you going to be in the same group that, let's say you choose an alternative group and some of the class reading one or two books, some there.
No.
So how's the book discussion is going to take place?
With the teacher.
No. So
They're not really.
20 kids are reading.
She's asking, are they gonna be in the class?
Usually it's the
Together.
same
Wow.
theme that in the next work has the same theme, the same,
Yeah, it's the same concept.
same concept.
Same skills,
Okay,
same
that's why it's
concept, same
different.
thing. Yeah, they're tested on the same skills, same
Right.
standard.
And anything
Different
extra would be
different
set
book.
up with the teacher.
It's different.
But if we're sitting there talking about the Perks of the Wallflower and you're studying something in another book, because your dad chose another book, you're not even listening to our discussion about the book. You're in an alternative location.
That's
Okay.
Thank you.
That's.
Okay.
You're not in
Okay.
the class.
All right. Any other unfinished business? Do we have any new business? No, sir, there's no time for, we don't take questions. It's still, we can talk afterwards if you like, but I apologize, but not now. Do we have any new business? I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Mr. Ekman so moves. Dr. Markey seconds the motion. With all those in favor signify by saying aye. Anybody like to stick around a little longer?
They never would.
Meeting
do that.
adjourned.
It took me 5 years.